Hello ladies and gents, this is a video that you had asked me to do a review for Memo Paris's Corfu, where I featured it in a video of new fragrances that I've just launched or launching soon, and many of you asked me to do a review of Corfu from Memo Paris. And this is a fragrance I've been excited about. I have it now, not only because I do enjoy Memo Paris, but also I've wanted to always go to Corfu. I lived in Greece when I was very young for about 6 months. That was a fun experience, complete foreign territory. So I've always wanted to go to Corfu, especially after that show, the Durrells in Corfu. So it's a place I want to go eventually, but we have a fragrance named after Corfu, and I'm going to let you know all about Corfu. But I'm not stopping there. I'm going to give you 5 additional rhubarb fragrance options for you, because Corfu features rhubarb as a star note. So either way, if you want to find out about Corfu and 5 more rhubarb fragrances, then please stay tuned. Yes, today I'm talking about Corfu from the house of Memo Paris, and also 5 rhubarb focused fragrances for you. And this is a note that I do enjoy, although in fragrances it comes off fruity to me, not necessarily like full-on vegetables, because it is, after all, a vegetable, right? It's a fruit. Anyway, it's a vegetable that's used in pies and things like that. I think that's the only thing I've noticed the rhubarb in. But in fragrances, it could smell kind of like a cross between fruits and vegetal, kind of a smell that I kind of quite like. It also has kind of like a gelatinous quality in fragrances. Just as you cut through the stalks, you can see that little liquidy vegetal touch. That experience is pretty much there, and it's definitely here in Corfu and some of the other fragrances I'm going to talk to you about today. But before I get to this fragrance, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed to the channel, please do click the subscribe button below, and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. And let me know if you're a fan of Memo Paris's fragrances and if you have tried Corfu. Also let me know if you have a favorite rhubarb fragrance. I'd like to find out. But either way, Corfu is a 2021 launch. It's part of the Grains Vagabonds collection of fragrances. It's priced in size 75 ml, $300. It comes in Eau De Parfum concentration, and Perfumer, I could not figure out who it is. But for me, this particular fragrance does have the signature Memo Paris touch. Throughout the fragrance, there's a softness about it and a coziness about it. Almost like, even though there's no mention of tea in the notes, I do get a kind of like a tea-like quality in here, which is, you know, cozy. Tea fragrances have a coziness about it. But this particular fragrance, I actually recently took it on a trip with me for my birthday, and I wore it a little warm, a little cool, and I think this particular fragrance does wear better in heat. Because it's very, very fresh and aromatic and fruity. But it features, I'm not going to tell you all the notes it features, because there's a ton of notes in this particular fragrance that I picked off of the Twisted Lily website, which this is sold at, and I have a link in the info box to this. You can go check it out and use my discount code, which is in the info box. But I'm going to give you the standout notes for this. So for me, its standout notes are rhubarb, rose, lemons, musk, grapefruit, blackcurrant, basil, oranges, raspberry, peaches, lily of the valley, bergamot. So this is what's really running the show for me, and it's basically a very, very juicy experience. Very juicy with lots of citruses. I get lots of citruses, but I'm not getting tartness, so these are not tart citruses. And even though lemons are pretty prominent here, it's a soft and sweet kind of lemons. It's definitely lemony and also grapefruity. There's some light zing to it, but it doesn't go tart, full-on tart. I think the zing for me from the grapefruits pretty much is a light spiciness to it, because the fragrance has a very fresh, spicy quality mixed with the rhubarb fruitiness. But of course there's the blackcurrant or cassis note that's in here as well. And this is a note I really enjoy, because it has greenish touches along with the fruity touches that I really enjoy from black currants, and it's definitely prominent. But for me, this particular fragrance, Corfu, is basically a fusion of rhubarb. It's kind of gelatinous touches and qualities that I was mentioning earlier. So it's fruity, lightly vegetal, and fused with the roses. Lots of roses here. So the combination is great because I find rhubarb has light rosiness to it anyway, so the rose and rhubarb work really, really great. See, these are basically what's running the show with this particular fragrance. But of course, as I said, lemons, grapefruits, the black currant, even basil. There's a basil-y greenness and herbal aromatic touch with this one. And of course, there's a little more fruits, raspberry and peaches, and then lightly some green touches from the lily of the valley. There's a very big green quality here, and I think it comes on from the, I think rhubarb personally to me has light green touches, but of course the black currant cassis comes in with the greenness, and the basil comes in, and of course lily of the valley. So in the end, it's a very cozy wear. I think it's perfect for warm days. And sadly, we're going into fall and winter now. So wear it when it's really, really warm outside, or, you know, look into it or buy it and keep it for come spring. I think it's perfect. I think it just comes alive in the heat personally for me more versus in the cold. As I said, we haven't really had a really hot summer, and even though it is, you know, fall now, and we get pretty much here in San Fran and Northern California warmth these months, it still really does not or has not heated up. Although today, as I'm shooting this, it's a little warmer, and I was testing it out just before I sat here once again. I do enjoy wearing this one a lot. I do enjoy rhubarb in fragrances. I can't find a lot of rhubarb in fragrances, and here, look at how much I've used up with this one. It sprays on very, very easily, and it's very, very cozy and comforting. It has like a tea-like quality, but in the end, it's kind of a fusion of fruity rhubarb and rose together. That's really, really beautiful. Only negative about this particular fragrance is the price tag, but Memo Paris is definitely a luxury niche fragrance house, and of course they charge these kind of prices for this particular fragrance. And one other thing I should say before I move on to the rhubarb fragrances, the box this comes in is amazing. Just a really, really beautifully packaged fragrance for a very beautiful luxury house, Memo Paris. Let me know if you've sampled it. Let me know if you like rhubarb in fragrances. And if you haven't sampled it, let me know if you're curious to sample it now that I've spoken about this particular fragrance and what I think about it. As I said, it's better probably for spring and summer, or, you know, warm days during the fall, but it definitely has this coziness. And if you like fresh, cozy fragrances, maybe you can try it then during the cooler months as well. But either way, those are my thoughts on Memo Paris's Corfu. And again, rhubarb is a note I'd like to explore, and I was digging and digging and digging to find rhubarb fragrances. In the end, I had 5 more. So this is 6 total rhubarb fragrances in today's video. But the first one I'm going to talk to you about is probably the king of all rhubarb fragrances. And even though it's an eau de cologne, I think if you like the idea of rhubarb, you've got to try this fragrance, because I think it totally represents rhubarb in a beautiful way. But this is Hermes. It's from the house of Hermes. It's Eau de Rhubarbe Écarlate. Really, really, really a gorgeous rhubarb fragrance. Very, very fruity, and I feel like there's berries in here. There's got to be a berry-like touch. If it's not here, I'm getting a berryness in here, which is kind of fun because I like berries. But once again, with this one, I'm getting that gelatinous touch. So when you slice into rhubarb stalks, kind of reminds me of red celery stalks, you do see that kind of like lightly gelatinous kind of quality. And this fragrance wears like that. So because of this jelly-like quality, I find coziness with this particular fragrance. It's a really, really beautiful fragrance, but sadly, it is an eau de cologne, so it's not necessarily very long-lived, but as a smell, it's fantastic. If you like the idea of rhubarb, I think you've got to try this one. And it does hint a little bit at Corfu. The rhubarb in here, nothing but the rhubarb, reminds me of the rhubarb in Corfu. But that's it. Nothing else reminds me of Corfu in this particular fragrance, but there's not a lot of going on with this particular fragrance. In the end, rhubarb, lantana, and musk is what's credited for this particular fragrance. But as I said, I'm getting rhubarb with berries. Anyway, great scent. Hermes Eau de Rhubarb Écarlate is the first rhubarb fragrance I'm going to talk to you about. The next one I'm going to talk to you about is totally a complete different type of a fragrance that features lots of rhubarb, but for me, even though it has this kind of like light gelatinous fruitiness, it's a complete departure from the fruitiness that we've been discussing with the last two fragrances. This is from the house of Javoy. This is 21 Conduit Street. So different this is. So in the end, this has lots of ambroxan, so it has very, very sexy touches, but it's mostly about grapefruit with rhubarb. Then it has some balsam fir, ambroxan, woodsy notes, lavender, and bergamot. What a great fragrance this is. For me, it's a great fragrance when I first experienced it, but it has grown on me a lot more. And I think because I like ambroxan a lot more now as well as when I first experienced ambroxan, especially with the launch of Baccarat Rouge back in the day. Was it 2015 when that launched? But the more I love Baccarat Rouge, the more I like this particular fragrance, because I have a lot of fragrances feature. I should say not Baccarat Rouge. The more I like ambroxan, the more I like fragrance. This particular fragrance, because this has that ambroxan musky sexiness, but it's got that zing with the grapefruit, and then of course the the fruitiness, the light fruitiness from the rhubarb in here. So when you get these notes together, it does kind of lightly remind me of something like Bulgari's Tigar, with a kind of a rhubarby twist to it, but it's a lot more than Bulgari's Tigar, because there's a lot more things happening with this one, of course, with the lavender, the balsam fir, and then of course the woods that are in here. It's a very, very sexy fragrance, but I like the fruitiness and also the grapefruit touches if I'm going to compare this particular fragrance to something like Baccarat Rouge. It's a different take on ambroxan that I really, really like. And Javoy fragrances do deliver, although this particular fragrance is not necessarily as intense as some of the other fragrances, but it's very, very musky and fruity, and then of course citrusy. So that is Javoy, 21 Conduit Street, featuring rhubarb as a note. Now, it's not the main star. That particular fragrance is not all about rhubarb, but you definitely experience the rhubarb in it. The last two fragrances, in fact the last three, including Corfu, were unisex targeted fragrances. This particular fragrance now is a feminine targeted fragrance. So this is a feminine targeted fragrance. It is Delina from the house of Parfums Marly, and I really enjoy this particular fragrance. And once again, it's very, very rosy and fruity. So this is roses, right? It has similar notes, but it goes in a complete different direction. This doesn't get too floral on me, even though it has that Lily of the Valley. It goes green. Lily of the Valley has lots of greenish touches. This one doesn't have greenness, but it's all about rose, lychee fruit, rhubarb, peony, bergamot, musk, Petalia, cashmeran, vanilla, cedar, vetiver, incense. So this also has that kind of like light gelatinous quality with the rhubarb I'm talking about. It's definitely prominent here, but it's lots of lychee fruit and rose and rhubarb together, but also lots of peony. These four notes are what's basically running the show with this particular fragrance, because you gotta love peony and floral fragrance. It's very, very floral to me, but it's a really, really fantastic smell. It smells really, really great, and I like the rhubarb in here. It adds this kind of like light gelatinous, lightly vegetal quality in contrast with the other notes of rose, lychees, and peony. One other thing this particular fragrance also has, not related to the rhubarb, there is a light milkiness under there, and when I get the whiffs of the milkiness, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Intense Cafe. But a beautiful fragrance, really, really feminine, but gorgeous wear, fruity, floral. Definitely that's the style of fragrance this is, and if you like the idea, definitely check it out. So this is Parfums Marly Delina for a great fragrance featuring rhubarb. Going to the house of imaginary authors next. This is Sundrunk. Here we have a fruity citrus fragrance take on the rhubarb note. And this is, again, once again, very, very cozy, where for me, citruses not necessarily get cozy like lemons and bergamot. They're more invigorating, but oranges have a coziness. And rhubarb in general has this coziness factor to begin with. And here, it's definitely prominent. But this Sundrunk features oranges, rhubarb, neroli, hibiscus flower, honeysuckle, and rose. See, the rose definitely complements this rhubarb note, although we didn't have the rose in the Javois, but the rest of the fragrances we're finding rose contrasting beautifully with the rhubarb. For me, this is a lot about oranges and rhubarb with that neroli note, so it's a great citrus fragrance. It does have the coziness, as I said, but wears beautifully and fruity and fresh as well. So that's Sundrunk from the house of Imaginary Authors. And the last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is from a house called Floral Street. This is Electric Rhubarb. So different, this particular fragrance. I recently bought it from Nordstrom because I needed a fifth rhubarb fragrance, and I had smelled this from a sample set that the brand had sent me, and they also had sent me another fragrance which I haven't spoken about on a video, or have I? I probably have one place, but this particular one I bought because I wanted to experience it, because I liked it. And even though it has lots of rhubarb, it doesn't come off like it's gelatinous qualities that I was talking about. This to me is almost like laundry clean. Not sure how this fragrance goes that direction, especially with the rhubarb, but for me, I think it's the sea salt that's taken it in that direction. It also has marine notes, so it's a unique take on rhubarb, one that goes fruity marine. But again, the rhubarb in here is not necessarily ultra gelatinous and also not necessarily ultra fruity, just like it is here. But I find it a lot fruitier here, the rhubarb, in comparison to this, even though the star of this fragrance is rhubarb. But lots of white flowers comes in, marine notes, sea salt, sandalwood, powdery notes, gardenia. So it's an interesting fusion of notes, fruity rhubarb, lots of white flowers, contrasted with marine and salty notes. So it gives me a kind of a laundry fresh experience. Where does it come from? I don't know. But I like the smell of laundry clean. I like the smell of soapy fragrances. And that's what this one particularly does. So interesting fragrance, electric rhubarb. Definitely makes sense to me, electric rhubarb. It's almost like the rhubarb has been electrified and it's turned into something completely different, you know, when electricity hits it and it cleans it up. Maybe, perhaps, I don't know, but I'm digging the way this particular fragrance smells. So that is Electric Rhubarb from the house of Floral Street. And that's the last rhubarb fragrance that I'm going to talk to you about. Let me know if you know this house of Floral Street, and let me know if you know the rest of the fragrances. Have you sampled them? Do you enjoy rhubarb in fragrances? And let me know what your thoughts are on Corfu. Again, Corfu is perfect for warm days. I think it comes alive in the heat, especially if it's really, really hot outside, like humid heat. If you live in a humid, hot country, and you like the idea of this fruity green floral kind of aromatic fragrance, definitely try Corfu. And as I said, I have links in the info box for this particular fragrance if you want to check it out. Of course, you can buy samples, and you can also buy bottles there of Corfu. Either way, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to watch my review for Memo Paris's Corfu and my 5 rhubarb fragrance alternatives as well. Let me know if you have any questions or comments with these fragrances or about these fragrances. Other than that, I appreciate you tuning in. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.